The red sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the rocky landscape as Captain Jake Murphy checked his weapon for the third time that morning. The mining colony stretched out below them, a collection of metal buildings and drilling equipment that looked tiny against the vast alien wilderness. Jake had been on this planet for 8 months now, and he still felt like an unwelcome guest. "Contact ahead, 2 clicks north." Lisa Carter's voice crackled through his helmet radio. She was lying flat on a ridge with her rifle scope trained, on the crystal forest beyond the mining site. "Looks like movement in the blue trees." Jake moved up beside her, squinting through his own binoculars. The crystal trees of Kepler 442b grew in strange formations, their translucent branches catching and bending the red sunlight into rainbow patterns. It was beautiful, but Jake had learned not to trust beauty on this world. Too many colonists had died admiring the scenery. "What kind of movement?" Jake asked. Behind them, Sam Rodriguez was checking his medical kit while Ben Hayes fiddled with the radio equipment. The 4 of them made up the entire patrol unit for this sector, which said a lot about how stretched thin the human forces were on this planet. "Big," Lisa replied. "Real big. Could be a Vorthak." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Vorthaks were the worst predators on this planet, standing 12 feet tall with natural armor that could stop most bullets. They had killed more colonists than all the other dangerous creatures combined. The standing orders were simple: shoot first, ask questions never. "All right, let's move in carefully," Jake said. "Remember, we keep our distance and follow protocol." The team moved down the slope, toward the crystal forest. Their boots crunched on the strange purple grass that grew everywhere on this world. Jake had asked the scientists why everything here was the wrong color, but they just gave him long explanations about different types of sunlight and plant chemistry that made his head hurt. As they got closer to the trees, Jake could hear something that made him stop in his tracks. It was a sound like nothing he had ever heard before, low and rumbling but somehow sad. It reminded him of a wounded dog, if dogs were the size of elephants and had voices like thunder. "You hear that?" Sam whispered. The medic had his scanner out, reading life signs through the crystal trees. "Hard to miss," Ben replied. He was the youngest member of their team, barely 22, and his voice shook a little when he was nervous. The sound came again, longer, this time and definitely full of pain. Jake held up his hand for the team to stop. Through a gap in the crystal trees, he could see something moving. It was huge and covered in what looked like gray stone, but it was definitely alive. "There," Lisa pointed with her rifle. "Holy hell, that thing is massive." Jake raised his binoculars again and felt his breath catch in his throat. It was a Vorthak, but unlike any he had seen in the training videos. This one was trapped under a pile of rocks and twisted metal that must have fallen from the sky. Probably debris from the meteor shower that had hit this sector last week. The creature's back legs were pinned, and dark blue blood pooled around its body. The Vorthak's head turned toward them, and Jake found himself looking into eyes that were nothing like what he expected. The training videos had shown Vorthaks as mindless killing machines, but these eyes held intelligence. More than that, they held pain and something that looked almost like hope. "Target acquired," Lisa said, settling her rifle into position. "Permission to engage, Captain." Jake watched the trapped creature struggle weakly against the debris. One of its arms was clearly broken, bent at an angle that made Jake wince. The Vorthak tried to pull itself free, but only succeeded in making more blue blood flow from its wounds. "Captain?" Lisa's voice was steady, professional. She had her shot lined up. Jake thought about the colonists who had died. He thought about the reports he had filed, the families he had written letters to, the friends he had lost to these creatures. Every manual, every briefing, every order said the same thing. Vorthaks were too dangerous to leave alive. But this one was not attacking. It was dying. "Hold your fire," Jake said quietly. "Sir?" Lisa's voice went up in surprise. "I said, hold your fire." Jake lowered his binoculars and looked at his team. "That thing is not going anywhere. It's hurt bad." "It's a Vorthak, Captain," Ben said. "They killed 30 people in the southern sector just last month." "I know what it is," Jake replied. He looked back at the trapped creature. It had stopped struggling and was just lying there, breathing heavily. Those intelligent eyes were still, watching them, but there was no anger in them, just pain and exhaustion. "What are we going to do?" Sam asked. The medic was studying his scanner readings with a frown on his face. Jake made a decision that would change everything, though he had no way of knowing it at the time. "We're going to help it." The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear the wind moving through the crystal trees. Finally, Lisa spoke up. "Captain, with all due respect, have you lost your mind?" "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But look at it. Really look at it. That thing is suffering, and it's not trying to hurt us. It could have roared or tried to scare us off, but it's just lying there. Because it can't move," Ben pointed out. "Or because it knows we could kill it and it's hoping we won't," Jake replied. He started walking toward the trapped Vorthak, ignoring the protests from his team. As he got closer, Jake could see just how badly the creature was hurt. The meteor debris had crushed its legs and one arm. Burns covered its natural armor where hot metal had touched it. But the worst injury was a deep gash across its chest that was bleeding steadily. The Vorthak watched Jake approach but made no move to attack. Up close, Jake could see that its armor was not really like stone at all, but more like crystal, similar to the trees around them. The creature's breathing was labored, and Jake realized it might not live much longer without help. "Sam, get over here with your medical kit," Jake called out. "Captain, I don't know how to treat alien injuries," Sam protested, but he started, walking over anyway. "Blood is blood," Jake replied, "and that wound needs to be sealed before it bleeds out." Working together, the team managed to move enough debris to free the Vorthak's legs. The creature whimpered when they lifted the heavy rocks, a sound that was almost human in its pain. Sam used his emergency medical foam to seal the worst wounds, though he had to use 3 cans to cover the large gashes. The whole time they worked, the Vorthak just watched them with those intelligent eyes. It never tried to bite or claw at them, even when they must have caused it pain by moving the debris. When they were finished, Jake stepped back and looked at what they had done. The Vorthak was free, its wounds sealed, though it would probably have scars for the rest of its life. It struggled to its feet, moving slowly and carefully, testing its injured legs. For a long moment, human and alien stared at each other. Jake felt like something important was happening, though he could not put it into words. Then the Vorthak made a sound, softer than before, almost like a purr. It nodded its massive head once, turned, and limped away into the crystal forest. Jake watched until it disappeared among the rainbow light of the trees. He had no way of knowing that the creature he had just saved would one day return the favor in ways he could never imagine. 3 months had passed since Jake Murphy and his team helped the wounded Vorthak in the crystal forest. Life at the mining colony had returned to its usual routine of extraction work and patrol duties. Jake often found himself looking toward the forest, wondering if the creature had survived its injuries. He never saw it again, and slowly the memory began to fade into the background of daily survival on this harsh world. That morning started like any other. Jake was reviewing patrol schedules in the colony's main building when Ben Hayes burst through the door, his face pale with panic. "Captain, you need to see this," Ben said, holding up his communication device. "We're getting emergency broadcasts from every human colony in this sector." Jake took the device and listened to the crackling transmission. The voice was barely audible through the static, but the words were clear enough to make his blood run cold. "All colonial forces, this is Admiral Parker from the Earth Defense Fleet. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. Multiple ships, down. Repeat, we are under attack. All colonies prepare for immediate evacuation or defense. This is not a drill." The message repeated 3 more times before cutting to static. Jake stared at the device, trying to process what he had just heard. In 8 months on Kepler 442b, they had never received any communication from Earth's main fleet. The colonies were supposed to be on their own. "Sir, there's more," Ben said, his voice shaking. "I've been monitoring other frequencies. The Titan colony went dark 2 hours ago. New Beijing stopped transmitting 30 minutes after that." Jake felt his stomach drop. Titan colony housed 50,000 people. New Beijing had even more. If they had gone dark, it meant something terrible was happening. Get Lisa and Sam, Jake ordered. Emergency meeting in the command center now. Within minutes, his team was assembled around the colony's main communication array. Lisa Carter had her weapons kit spread out on the table, checking every piece of equipment they owned. Sam Rodriguez was running diagnostics on their medical supplies, though Jake could see the worry in his eyes. What do we know? Jake asked. Ben pulled up a star map on the main screen. Red dots marked the colonies that had stopped transmitting. There were more red dots than blue ones now. Whatever hit the other colonies is moving fast, Ben explained. Based on the pattern, they're heading this way. We've got maybe 6 hours before they reach our sector. Who are they? Lisa asked, loading ammunition into her rifle with practiced efficiency. Unknown, Ben replied. The transmissions that got through before the colonies went dark mentioned ships unlike anything in our databases. Energy weapons that cut through our shields like they weren't there. Some kind of gravity technology that can crush our ships from the inside. Jake studied the map, trying to think like a military strategist instead of a colonial patrol captain. The mining colony on Kepler 442b was small, barely 800 people, but it produced rare minerals that Earth needed for starship construction. If these attackers were smart, they would want to capture the facility intact. How many people? Can we evacuate? Jake asked. Sam checked his datapad. The transport ships can hold maybe 200 people each. We have 3 ships that are spaceworthy. That's 600 people if we pack them tight. That leaves 200, Lisa said grimly, plus all the equipment and mineral stockpiles. Jake made his first command decision of what would become the most important day of his life. We're not evacuating. His team stared at him in silence. Finally, Ben spoke up. Captain, with respect, we're a 4-person patrol unit. We've got maybe 40 security guards total for the whole colony. Whatever destroyed the Earth fleet and took out colonies with thousands of soldiers, we can't fight it. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But we can't run either. Those minerals are the only reason Earth has any starships at all. If we lose this colony, we lose our ability to build new ships. Without ships, humanity is finished. Lisa nodded slowly. So we make a stand. We make a stand, Jake confirmed. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Jake organized the colony's defenses while his team prepared for battle. They had 42 security guards, most of them former military, and about 50 miners who knew how to use basic weapons. Against an enemy that had destroyed the Earth fleet, it was not much, but it was what they had. The colony's defensive systems were designed to keep out Vorthax and other local predators, not military starships. Jake had Lisa rig explosive charges around the main mining equipment. If they were going to lose, they would make sure the enemy got nothing useful. Sam set up a medical station in the most protected building, preparing for casualties. Ben monitored all communication frequencies, hoping for any information about what they were facing. At 1400 hours, Ben picked up new transmissions. Contact, he announced. Multiple ships entering the system. They're huge, Captain. Jake joined Ben at the communication array. On the screen, sensor readings showed 12 ships approaching Kepler 442b. Each one was larger than anything in Earth's fleet. Any response to our hails? Jake asked. Nothing, Ben replied. They're not even acknowledging our transmissions. The ships entered orbit around the planet without any attempt at communication. Jake watched through binoculars as dark shapes began dropping from the sky, growing larger as they approached the surface. Landing craft, Lisa observed. Looks like they're planning a ground assault. Jake counted at least 20 landing craft heading for different points around the colony. Each one was big enough to hold hundreds of soldiers. Positions, Jake ordered, through his radio. All defensive teams to your assigned locations. Remember, we're not trying to win. We're trying to make them pay for every inch. The first landing craft touched down 2 kilometers from the main colony. Jake watched through his scope as the craft opened and disgorged its cargo. What came out made him question everything he thought he knew about warfare. The aliens were tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to reflect light like mirrors. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. Their weapons were unlike anything Jake had ever seen, glowing with internal energy that made the air around them shimmer. What are those things? Lisa whispered from her position on the roof of the main building. I don't know, Jake replied, but they're not here to talk. The alien forces began their advance on the colony. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons sweeping left and right as they searched for targets. When one of the security guards opened fire from a hidden position, the aliens responded instantly. A beam of blue light struck the guard's position, and both the man and the concrete wall he was hiding behind simply vanished. Holy hell, Ben breathed over the radio. Did you see that? Jake had seen it. He had also seen how the aliens moved, how they communicated without speaking, how their weapons worked. This was not a battle they could win through conventional tactics. All units fall back to the secondary perimeter, Jake ordered. Do not engage unless they're directly threatening civilians. The alien forces advanced methodically, securing each building and checking every room. They moved like they had done this many times before, efficient and thorough. Jake realized that humanity was facing an enemy that had conquered other worlds, other species. As the aliens closed in on the main colony buildings, Jake made preparations for what he assumed would be his final stand. He had no way of knowing that help was coming from the most unexpected source imaginable. The silver-skinned aliens closed in on the colony's main building where Jake and his remaining defenders had made their last stand. Through the reinforced windows, Jake could see their perfect formations, moving like a deadly dance across the courtyard. 12 of his security guards were already dead, their positions vaporized by the aliens' terrible blue weapons. Ammunition count, Jake called out over his radio. Down to my last 3 magazines, Lisa replied from her sniper position on the roof. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the exhaustion in it. Medical supplies almost gone, Sam reported. From the makeshift hospital he had set up in the basement. We've got 14 wounded down here and I'm running out of everything. Ben was hunched over his communication equipment, still trying to reach any human forces that might help them. Nothing, Captain. All frequencies are either dead or full of distress calls. Jake looked out at the alien forces surrounding them. The creatures moved with mechanical precision, never wasting motion, never making mistakes. Their weapons could punch through concrete walls, and their silver armor seemed to deflect the few human bullets that managed to hit them. At least we made them work for it, Jake said, trying to keep his team's spirits up. In truth, they had barely slowed the aliens down. The enemy had taken the colony in less than 2 hours. The aliens began their final advance. Jake could see them setting up some kind of large weapon in the courtyard, probably something that would finish off the main building and everyone inside it. He was about to give the order to surrender when the ground began to shake. At first, Jake thought it was another earthquake. Kepler 442b had unstable geology, and tremors were common near the mining sites. But this shaking had a rhythm to it, like footsteps. Very large footsteps. You feel that? Lisa asked over the radio. Hard to miss, Jake replied. The vibrations were getting stronger, and now he could hear something else. A sound like thunder, but not quite. It was more organized than thunder, more purposeful. The aliens in the courtyard stopped their advance. Their heads turned toward the crystal forest beyond the colony, and for the first time since the battle began, their perfect coordination seemed to falter. The sound came again, louder this time, and Jake realized what it was. It was a roar, but not just one. It was dozens of roars all calling out together like some kind of battle cry. What the hell is that? Ben whispered. Jake raised his binoculars and looked toward the forest. What he saw made him question his own sanity. Moving through the crystal trees, their armor reflecting the red sunlight like mirrors, was a pack of Vorthax. Not just 3 or 4, but dozens of them. Jake had never heard of Vorthax working together before, but here they were, moving as a coordinated group. At the front of the pack was a Vorthak larger than the others, with scars across its crystal armor that Jake recognized. It was the creature he had helped 3 months ago, healed and healthy and very much alive. The aliens in the courtyard raised their weapons toward the approaching Vorthax, but something strange happened. Their blue energy beams struck the crystal armor of the creatures and simply bounced off, reflecting in random directions like light hitting a mirror. The Vorthax kept coming, their massive forms shaking the ground with each step. The lead Vorthak, the one Jake had saved, looked directly at the main building where Jake was hiding. For a moment, their eyes met through the binoculars. The creature made a sound, softer than its battle roar, almost like recognition. Then it turned back toward the aliens and let out a call that made Jake's bones vibrate. The Vorthak pack charged. Jake had seen nature documentaries about wolf packs hunting, but this was something else entirely. The Vorthaks moved with deadly purpose, using their natural armor to deflect the aliens' energy weapons while their powerful claws tore through the silver-skinned invaders like paper. The aliens tried to adapt their tactics, switching to different weapons and formations, but the Vorthak seemed to anticipate every move. They split into smaller groups, flanking the alien positions and attacking from multiple directions at once. "This is impossible," Lisa breathed over the radio. "Those things are working together." Jake watched as his former enemy became his unlikely ally. The lead Vorthak fought its way through the alien forces toward the main building. It moved with intelligence and purpose, not the mindless rage that the training videos had described. When it reached the building's entrance, the creature stopped and looked up at Jake's position. It made a series of gestures with its good arm, pointing at the aliens, then at Jake, then at itself. The meaning was clear enough. "We fight together." "Captain, what are your orders?" Lisa asked. Jake made another decision that would change the course of the war. "All units support the Vorthaks. Coordinate your fire with their attacks." "Sir, are you sure about this?" Ben asked. "No," Jake admitted. "But they're fighting the same enemy we are, and right now that makes them allies." Jake's remaining security guards began firing at the aliens from their defensive positions, timing their shots to support the Vorthak attacks. The coordination was rough at first, but it worked. The aliens found themselves caught between two very different types of enemies, and their tactical computers seemed unable to adapt to this unexpected alliance. Sam emerged from the basement, with several of the walking wounded, adding their firepower to the defense. Even some of the miners who had never held weapons before picked up rifles and joined the fight. The battle turned into something Jake had never imagined. Humans and Vorthaks, fighting side by side, each using their strengths to cover the other's weaknesses. The Vorthaks absorbed the aliens' energy weapons with their crystal armor, while the humans used their smaller size and mobility to attack from cover. Lisa discovered that her explosive charges worked much better when a Vorthak could carry them into close range. Sam found that the creatures could understand basic hand signals, allowing him to direct them toward wounded humans who needed help. The lead Vorthak made its way to Jake's position, moving carefully through the building's corridors. When it reached the command center, it looked at Jake with those intelligent eyes and made more gestures. Jake realized the creature was trying to communicate something important. It pointed toward the alien landing craft in the distance, then made a motion like something flying away. It was telling Jake that more aliens were coming. "Ben, can you patch into their communication system?" Jake asked. "I can try," Ben replied, working frantically with his equipment. "Got something. It sounds like they're calling for reinforcements." The battle in the courtyard was winding down. The Vorthak pack had destroyed most of the alien ground forces, but Jake knew this was just the beginning. If more ships came, even the Vorthaks might not be able to stop them. The lead Vorthak seemed to understand this too. It made more gestures, pointing at the other Vorthaks, then at Jake's people, then spreading its arms wide. Jake got the message. Bigger group, stronger fight. "I think it's asking us to work together on a larger scale," Jake told his team. "Can we trust them?" Sam asked. Jake looked at the Vorthak who had risked everything to help defend the colony. 3 months ago, he had shown mercy to a wounded enemy. Now that enemy had returned with an army to save his life. "I think we can," Jake said. "I think we have to." The Vorthak made that soft, purring sound again, the same one it had made when Jake first helped it. Then it turned and walked back toward its pack, leaving Jake to wonder if one act of kindness could really change the fate of two species. News of the successful defense at the Kepler 442b mining colony spread across human space faster than anyone expected. Within a week, Jake Murphy found himself promoted to colonel and transferred to a space station orbiting Earth. The small conference room where he now sat was filled with the highest-ranking military officers in the human fleet, all waiting to hear his report. "Tell us again about these Vorthax," Admiral Collins said, leaning forward across the metal table. "The part about them working together." Jake had told this story dozens of times already, but he knew how important it was. "They moved like a military unit, sir. Coordinated attacks, tactical formations, the works. Their leaders seemed to understand our hand signals and even some basic strategy." "And you believe this cooperation can be repeated?" asked General Hayes, a stern woman with gray hair and suspicious eyes. "I know it can," Jake replied. "The Vorthak I helped 3 months ago recognized me. It made a choice to help us, and it convinced others to follow. That's not instinct, that's intelligence." The room fell silent as the officers considered this information. Jake understood their hesitation. Everything they knew about Vorthax came from reports of attacks on human colonies. The idea that these creatures could be allies went against years of military doctrine. Admiral Collins spoke first. "The Zephyrian Empire has conquered 47 human colonies in the past month. Their technology is superior to ours in every way. We need something that can give us an advantage." "With respect, sir," General Hayes interrupted, "we're talking about trusting creatures that have killed hundreds of our people. And they're talking about trusting the species that's been shooting them on sight for 3 years," Jake replied. "Sometimes you have to take risks to survive." Over the following days, Jake worked with xenobiologists and military strategists to develop what they called the Interspecies Cooperation Protocol. It was a fancy name for a simple idea: find other alien species that were also threatened by the Zephyrians and convince them to work together. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lucy Parker, a communications expert, had been studying the recordings Ben Hayes made during the battle. She discovered that the Vorthak roars contained complex patterns that suggested a sophisticated language. "They're not just making noise," Dr. Parker explained to Jake during one of their planning sessions. "These sound patterns have grammar, syntax, even what appears to be emotional context. The Vorthax have been trying to communicate with us for years, but we never bothered to listen." Jake thought about the creature he had saved, how it had tried to communicate through gestures and drawings in the dirt. "Can we learn their language?" "We're working on it," Dr. Parker said. "But more importantly, we've detected similar communication patterns from other species in Zephyrian-occupied territory. If we can establish contact, we might find more allies." The breakthrough came 2 weeks later. A message arrived from the Yao, granite giants of Tau Ceti, a species of rock-like creatures that lived on a world rich in heavy metals. The Zephyrians had attacked their planet 6 months ago, but unlike most conquered worlds, the granite giants were still fighting. "They want to meet," Ben Hayes told Jake as they reviewed the translated message. Ben had been promoted to major and put in charge of alien communications. "They've heard about what happened at your colony, and they want to know if humans can be trusted." Jake found himself leading humanity's first official diplomatic mission to an alien world. The transport ship carried a small team: Jake, Ben, Sam Rodriguez, now a lieutenant colonel in charge of interspecies medical support, and Dr. Parker. They also brought along Hunter, the Vorthak leader, who had somehow communicated that he wanted to be part of the meeting. Tau Ceti was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The entire planet seemed to be made of living rock, with the granite giants emerging from cliff faces and mountainsides like sculptures coming to life. The beings themselves were massive, even larger than Vorthax, with bodies that looked like they had been carved from stone by ancient artists. The meeting took place in a vast underground cavern lit by glowing crystals. The granite giant leader, who called himself Boulder Speaks Truth, towered over even Hunter. When he spoke, his voice sounded like an avalanche, deep and rumbling and full of power. "Your small flesh people interest us," Boulder Speaks Truth said through Dr. Parker's translation device. "The crystal hunters vouch for your honor. This is unusual." Jake learned that the granite giants called Vorthax crystal hunters because of their armor. He also learned that the two species had been at war for generations until the Zephyrians attacked both their worlds. Common enemy makes strange allies, Boulder Speaks Truth continued. Our stone flesh turns their energy weapons. Your small size moves where we cannot. Crystal hunters reflect their beams. Together, we are stronger. The alliance expanded rapidly after that. The Whisperbirds of Proxima Centauri, beings of pure energy who could read minds and see through Zephyrian stealth technology, joined after their homeworld was attacked. The shellbacks of Wolf 359, turtle-like creatures with natural shields that could block any weapon, added their defensive expertise to the growing coalition. Each species brought unique abilities that complemented the others. Jake found himself coordinating joint training exercises that would have been impossible to imagine just months before. Humans learned to fight alongside 12-foot-tall rock creatures and crystal-armored hunters. Whisperbirds provided intelligence that let the coalition predict Zephyrian movements days in advance. The real test came when they decided to retake the Orion mining station, a human facility that had been captured early in the war. The station was heavily defended by Zephyrian forces and protected by their most advanced weapons. Jake led the assault personally, with Hunter at his side and representatives from all the allied species. The battle plan was complex, requiring perfect coordination between beings who had been enemies just months before. The granite giants absorbed the station's heavy weapons, while the Vorthax used their speed and agility to disable key systems. Shellbacks provided mobile cover for human assault teams, while Whisperbirds guided everyone through the station's maze-like corridors by reading the thoughts of Zephyrian defenders. Sam had trained field medics from each species to treat wounds across biological lines. It was strange watching a granite giant carefully bandaging a human soldier's arm with fingers the size of tree branches, but it worked. The station fell in less than 4 hours. More importantly, they captured it intact, along with dozens of Zephyrian prisoners and several of their advanced weapons. For the first time since the war began, humanity and its allies had won a clear victory. Word of the success spread throughout the galaxy. Within weeks, Jake was receiving messages from species he had never heard of, all asking to join the coalition. The singing crystals of Arcturus who could disrupt Zephyrian computers with their harmonic frequencies. The phase dancers of Vega, who could become invisible and walk through walls. The storm riders of Rigel, who controlled electricity and could overload enemy systems. Jake's small mining colony defense had become an interstellar alliance of 27 different species. He kept an office on the coalition headquarters ship, but he spent most of his time visiting different worlds, learning about new allies, and planning joint operations. Hunter stayed with him throughout, serving as both friend and translator with species that humans could not easily communicate with. Their friendship had become a symbol of the coalition, proof that former enemies could become closest allies. Standing on the bridge of the headquarters ship, looking out at a fleet that contained vessels from dozens of worlds, Jake often thought about that day in the Crystal Forest when he chose mercy over protocol. One small act of kindness had grown into the largest military alliance in galactic history. The massive fleet hanging in space above Zephyr Prime looked like nothing Jake Murphy had ever imagined. Ships from 27 different worlds filled the darkness between the stars, their various designs creating a patchwork of alien technology that somehow worked together. Jake stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship watching the enemy homeworld turn slowly beneath them. "Final fleet count, Ben," Jake said to his old communications officer, who now served as the Coalition's strategic coordinator. 3,000 ships, sir," Ben replied, checking his displays. Every species in the Alliance sent their best. The granite giants brought their mountain ships. The Whisperbirds have 40 of their thought vessels. Even the phase dancers managed to build ships that can become invisible. Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on the planet below. Zephyr Prime was a world of silver cities and gleaming towers that stretched up toward the sky like metal fingers. It was beautiful in its own way, but Jake knew that beauty hid the command center of an empire that had destroyed dozens of worlds. Hunter stood beside him, the Vorthax crystal armor reflecting the light from the planet's 3 moons. Over the past year, Jake had learned to read the creature's body language almost as well as human expressions. Right now, Hunter was nervous but determined, scared?" Jake asked quietly. Hunter made a soft rumbling sound that Jake had learned meant, "Yes, but ready anyway." The Vorthak had picked up some human words over the months, but most of their communication still happened through gestures and sounds. "Me too," Jake admitted. The battle plan was the most complex military operation in galactic history. Each species would attack different parts of the Zephyrian defense network, using their unique abilities to overwhelm systems that had never faced such diverse threats. The goal was not just to defeat the enemy fleet, but to capture the planetary command center that controlled the entire Zephyrian Empire. "All ships report ready," Lisa Carter announced from her position at the tactical station. She had been promoted to general and now commanded the coalition's battle coordination. "Waiting for your orders, sir." Jake looked around the bridge at the faces of his old team. Sam Rodriguez was monitoring medical stations throughout the fleet, ready to coordinate rescue operations across species lines. Ben was managing communications between beings who thought in colors, spoke in music, or communicated through electrical fields. These were the same people who had been with him when he made the decision to help a wounded Vorthak in a crystal forest. That choice had led them all here, to the most important battle in galactic history. "Begin the assault," Jake ordered. The fleet moved toward Zephyr Prime like a living thing, ships of every size and shape flowing around each other in patterns that looked chaotic but followed carefully planned routes. The Zephyrian defense fleet rose to meet them, their silver ships moving in the perfect formations that had conquered so many worlds. The first clash was massive and terrible. Zephyrian quantum cannons tore through coalition ships, while energy, beams that could slice planets in half, reached out across space. But for every coalition ship that fell, the diverse alliance found new ways to strike back. Shellback vessels absorbed direct hits from quantum cannons and kept fighting. Phase dancer ships disappeared just as Zephyrian targeting systems locked onto them. Stormrider vessels turned the enemy's own energy weapons against them, redirecting quantum cannon blasts back at their sources. Jake watched the battle unfold on the main screen, but his real attention was on the planetary surface. The space battle was just a distraction. The real goal was getting ground forces to the command center in the planet's capital city. "Stormriders report they've disabled the orbital defense grid," Ben announced. "We have a clear path to the surface." "Launch ground assault," Jake ordered. The landing craft that dropped toward Zephyr Prime carried the strangest army ever assembled. Humans in powered armor fought alongside 12-foot granite giants. Vorthak packs moved with shellback defensive formations. Whisperbirds provided intelligence while phase dancers scouted ahead invisibly. Jake and Hunter led the main assault, forced toward the capital city. The Zephyrian ground forces that met them were unlike anything they had faced before. These were not the standard silver-skinned soldiers, but elite troops with advanced armor and weapons designed specifically to counter each of the coalition species. The enemy had learned from their defeats. They had weapons that could penetrate, shellback armor, devices that could detect phase dancers even when invisible, and sonic disruptors that could harm whisper birds. For every advantage the coalition had developed, the Zephyrians had found a counter. The battle for the capital city turned into a grinding urban warfare nightmare. Coalition forces advanced block by block through streets of silver metal and crystal glass. Zephyrian defenders fought from every building, using their knowledge of the terrain to maximum advantage. Jake found himself pinned down behind a destroyed vehicle with Hunter and a small group of human soldiers. Energy beams filled the air above, them making any movement impossible. The coalition advance had stalled just kilometers from the command center. "We're not going to make it," one of the soldiers said, reloading his weapon for the 4th time. "They've got us stopped cold." Jake looked at Hunter, who was studying the battlefield with those intelligent eyes. The Vorthak made a series of gestures pointing at the enemy positions, then at the mixed groups of coalition forces scattered throughout the city. "What is it?" Jake asked. Hunter drew in the dust with one clawed finger, showing Jake what he was thinking. The drawing showed different species working together in ways they had never tried before, not just fighting alongside each other, but truly combining their abilities into something new. Jake understood. They had been using each species' strengths separately, but Hunter was suggesting something more. Complete integration, where the abilities of different species merged into combinations the enemy could never predict. "All units, this is Colonel Murphy," Jake said into his radio. "New battle plan. I want mixed teams of at least 3 different species working together in ways we've never tried before. Granite giants carrying phase dancers, whisper birds guiding shellback charges, humans coordinating everything in real time." The change was immediate and dramatic. Granite giants became mobile fortresses carrying phase dancers who could appear inside enemy positions without warning. Whisper birds read enemy thoughts and passed the information to storm riders who struck with perfect timing. Shellbacks provided cover while Vorthax and humans attacked from unexpected angles. The Zephyrian defenses, designed to counter individual species, could not adapt to these new combinations. Their tactical computers had no data on granite giants, who could phase through walls or storm riders guided by telepathic intelligence. Jake and Hunter led the final charge toward the command center. Around them, the coalition forces moved like parts of a single organism, each species contributing to a whole that was greater than the sum of its parts. Humans provided creativity and adaptability. Vorthax offered speed and reflexes. Granite giants brought unstoppable strength, and all the other species added their own unique contributions. The sight of a human soldier and a Vorthax warrior charging side by side became the symbol that carried the entire coalition forward. Species that had been enemies for generations now fought as brothers, united by the example Jake had set with one simple act of mercy. The Zephyrian command center fell within hours. With their central coordination destroyed, the Empire's expansion finally ended. Ships across the galaxy received surrender orders as the 1,000-year Zephyrian Empire collapsed in a single day. Standing in the captured command center, surrounded by beings from dozens of worlds, Jake thought about the wounded creature he had helped in a crystal forest. One choice to show mercy instead of following orders had changed the fate of the entire galaxy. Hunter stood beside him, and for the first time since Jake had known the creature, the Vorthax seemed truly at peace. The war was over, and a new age of cooperation among the stars had begun.